Welcome to the Horror Hangout, a podcast where film fans watch the best and worst horror movies of all time and talk about them. My name is Ben Errington, and I'm joined by regular co-host Mr.
Andy Conduit Tenor. Hello, Ben, and welcome back from your holidays. How you doing?
Thank you very much. Glad to be back. Yeah, I'm good. Did you miss me? Oh, officially, Ed stepped in as co-host. I think that's kind of what happens, isn't it? It's co-host rather than guest when it's just two of you. That's
Yeah, when
fair.
there's two of you. Yeah, I can't carry
Uh,
this place up. I can't carry this show on my own, Ben. Um,
How do you feel about that? Because some people do like solo podcasts, don't they? Solo podcasts do exist.
I feel like those people are the kind of people that are also the ones that you see, like, it's on Twitter this week. This person playing Elden Ring using their brain. I mean, I'm incredibly impressed by what they're doing, but fuck you for
Using their
being such a
brain?
show off as well. Yeah, just using their brain. Can't even
What,
play that
like,
bloody game with my hands. It's too hard.
so what? They're just explain that to me. Explain that to me, a person who clearly doesn't have a brain,
They've got some
please.
kind of sensors on the head, and I don't know
Oh,
how
okay.
it does it. I didn't read the article, but I assume they just think about what
Well,
they're trying to do. Just
in a
maybe think about apples, you'll turn left, and you think about tennis, you go right, or something like that.
in a
But
way that feels like it should be easier, but no, you get messed up. I much prefer when people play a game like Elden Ring, but like on a dance mat.
oh yeah, on a dance mat, only using your tongue, or like, oh, I've done it on a guitar controller. But if that isn't hard enough, so I've done it with a guitar controller and my feet, and I'm like, I'm very impressed, but fuck you. That's
Yeah.
how I feel about someone who manages all the admin of a podcast. I don't really. I'm very shielded it from it in my regular life, Ben, because you do all of the hard work. But
What
you
kind
know,
of tangents could you go on if you're on a podcast on your own as well? Like I feel like you just cut straight to the chase. You'd cover all the standard stuff. If there was a tangent to go on, you'd be at risk of sounding like a madman.
episodes would be 15 minutes long if we did this solo, because you'd have to just be scripted, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like left to my own devices, without somebody like you to maybe rein me in slightly, I might say something bizarre.
I think it's just an editing game. I think, but I've seen a couple of podcasts which effectively are a bit like what we do here. They certainly appear as if they are, by and large, chat with a rough structure of what they're talking about. But then I heard an outtake from one particular one I listened to, and it was like, okay, so this is the script and things like that. You have a script
A
for
whole script. Wow.
that. Like, you actually have a script that you're like you're doing a performance. Madness.
That is insane. I mean, little peek behind the curtain for anybody listening. We've got like a very, very rough structured script where we've kind of got like the intro and the outro written down because it can be quite difficult to remember, I think. You might freeze up. I definitely do that. And then just like some standard structuring bits for it. But everything else is kind of like blanks that
Just
we
turn up.
just turn up, mate. You know, oh, I ain't even seen the film, mate. Yeah, I have. I've seen the film. I definitely watched the film. Something that perhaps I don't do anymore that I think maybe you do is I don't even make notes anymore. I used to be quite rigorous in making notes on lots of different things, my thoughts and feelings. I think after doing it so much, so obviously doing it every week for 6+ years, coming up to 7 years, I think.
Now,
Oh wow. I think I just get used to kind of like remembering certain things and having a point of reference that allows me to then there's definitely been times when we've recorded and I've kind of gone, oh, I forgot to say that really good point I had, or bad
yeah,
point.
thoughts and feelings. I tend to give myself a few dot points of like bits of the film that happened, or if there's a particular fact that I've
Hmm.
spotted, I'll make a quick note of those. But no, not any not detailed stuff anymore. So it's not for me to say whether some of the things we say are classed as jokes or insight or any of those things, however you want to label them. But they're top of the dome, everybody. Never be thought this isn't organically generated stuff.
Very, very occasionally I may have thought of a joke like while watching the movie,
You sit
and
there, I can't wait to say that later.
I can't wait to say that, and I'm almost like, I hope Andy gives me an opening or gives me a setup to then jump in with a joke. I've probably definitely like shoehorned it in more than once, but you know, it's got to be done.
Yeah. But either way,
Exactly.
podcast admin aside, I'm glad you're back then, and I'm glad you had a lovely holiday. did you,
Yeah.
while you were away, get a chance to keep on top of the horror news?
Yeah, I kept on top of the horror news. First of all, obviously thanks to Ed for stepping in last week in my absence and being a very always a great co-host slash guest. And I think we should invite him back soon so that I can be involved as well, because I did get a bit of FOMO. Not gonna lie, Andy, I did get a bit of FOMO.
Just listening back to us saying, why are they responding to me? I'm saying these things.
I've got so many hot takes. And what a great movie to cover. A great bad movie as well. I mean, my rating I think would have been around about a C as well, simply because it is kind of a bit silly. And BB's voice, I was kind of a little bit. There was like that weird scat song at the end as well.
Gremlin voice.
Yeah, he's got like a gremlin voice. Who signed that off? Because I'm like, that is kind of silly, right? And also, I don't know if I told you this. I might have mentioned it to you. BB reminds me of the robot from Flubber. It's like the same
color
scheme.
scheme.
Exactly the same color scheme. And I feel like if the
Equally
robot
tragic death.
Yeah, equally tragic.
She gets
How does he
smashed
die?
by burglars.
Just gets smashed by burglars, yeah.
She gets smashed by burglars. BB gets shotgunned by
Buffalo
Fratelli.
Bill. Oh yeah, Fratelli. But it's good to finally see the movie that the famous GIF of someone getting their head smashed in by a basketball was from. Because I always just kind of thought, what's that from then? Now I know.
And now you've done it. Next up, shopping mall.
Next up, shopping mall, exactly. But I did manage to keep on top of the news. Hopefully I'm not treading on anyone's toes, and you've not mentioned this from last week already. I don't think you have, because some of it's pretty brand new. There is a trailer for a movie called The Boogeyman, which is the latest Stephen King adaptation, and it's directed by Rob Savage, who directed Host and Dashcam, two films that we've covered on the show. And we've also had writer Jed Shepard, writer of Host, and he's a co-writer on Dashcam as well, I believe. He's been a guest on the show when we discussed From Beyond a little while ago. I say a little while, it's probably over a year now. But yeah, so based on the short story from Stephen King, still reeling from the tragic death of their mother, a teenage girl and her little brother find themselves plagued by a sadistic presence in their house and struggle to get their grieving father to pay attention before it's too late. Does that sound familiar at all?
The story, I mean,
Yeah.
grieving fathers notoriously difficult to get their attention on things.
I say it sounds a little bit like this film. Obviously, slightly different ages. Yeah.
But
so yeah,
I think this looks great. Have you seen the trailer?
No, another one. I should, before I even bring it up on the horror news section, I should watch the trailer. But I guess I'm just making everybody else aware.
I've seen it. I can confirm. Looks dead good. I think this is a film absolutely in front of and behind the camera, absolutely stacked with some great talent. The trailer in itself is incredibly tense. Can't wait. Cannot wait.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to go and watch it then, because yeah, I probably should. Stephen King, he could write a paragraph and someone would turn that into a movie, wouldn't they?
Yeah. And famously, his books are often quite much longer than a paragraph.
Yeah. Based on that sentence that Stephen King posted on Twitter, this is the tweet. And everyone will be queuing up to watch it. So this is out on June the 2nd. And it is going to get a theatrical release as well. So I think initially it was going to be like a direct, a VOD sort of thing. But apparently after a strong test screening, plus approval from King himself, which is good, he gave the studio confidence to supersize the film's release strategy. How exciting. That's exciting. Let's talk about other up-and-coming horror names. Zach Kreger, who directed Barbarian, sets up a new horror movie with New Line Cinema called Weapons. Plot details are being kept quite under wraps at the moment, but it's a multi and interrelated story horror epic that is tonally in the vein of Magnolia. I mean, that's going to be pretty intense.
Unless she doesn't mean the film, unless she means the color.
I mean, I guess the film. There we go. Oh yeah, the 1999 actor crammed showcase. I do like it when films are actor crammed. Get as many of them in there as possible. Yeah.
Like clown cars. Shove them in.
Just like clown cars. So this is pretty exciting because I think Barbarian has done really well. It's kind of crazy to look back at when it was premiering at Fright Fest, and when we covered Fright Fest, and Lucy saw the movie, and we didn't know all that much about it, but now it's like had a big sort of had a theatrical release, had a Disney Plus release.
And it's so wild that that is on Disney Plus now. And I think it's been, by and large, certainly in our bubble, I would say really well received. I know there are, even within horror community, I know there's some folks that are very strongly the other way.
Mm,
They're like, no, actually, not good. But
yeah.
one of my top films of the year last year, I thought it was really, really good. Can't wait to see more.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Excited to see what else we got from that director. And the last piece of horror news I've got here is HBO has officially ordered season 2 of The Last of Us. I guess this was kind of definitely going to happen, but I think it like racked up on day one. It racked up like 6 million viewers. Episode 1. I think it was 10 million after a couple of days. And I guess it's just been doing more since then. And critically, it's been doing well. We're on episode 3 now, which I think you've seen. I've only seen up to episode 2, but episode 3 is getting rave reviews. And apparently, it is going to be like season 1 is the first game, and season 2 would potentially be the second game, which is interesting because then you kind of run out immediately after 2 seasons of source material.
They've also said that, haven't they? Because the makers of the game have been out this week, in fact, as well, and said,
Okay.
At the same time as confirming they're stepping away from doing more Uncharted for the foreseeable
Yeah.
future, also saying we may or may not do a third one of this. Like
Yeah.
we just
It's
went, but they've
interesting.
also said that the show is never going to go past the games.
Okay. That like a Game of Thrones scenario when
Yeah, I think
what's
they're
his name?
basically trying to. I think they're basically trying to avoid that happening, where the
They could.
returns on the original format are kind of squashed by the TV adaptation going past it.
It's not following the games exactly, and it is. I know some scenes are like pretty much ripped directly from the game, which is great, but some things like episode 3 is expanding on certain characters and relationships, and some more flashback, I guess, which doesn't really happen in the first game. I know we get the DLC Left Behind, which is a flashback to when something happened to Ellie, a tragedy. But apart from that, it's kind of so I think there's lots of room for them to kind of like elaborate on certain
Yeah,
characters and relationships and stuff without needing to follow the exact plot of the
I
game. And I
think
don't
time
mind
will
that.
tell, and we'll see how people go to it. I think you could probably get away with expanding it, but equally, I'd be comfortable with them not having to follow typical TV cycle of saying, okay,
Yeah.
so I guess next year the next one will be out. They could do two, and
Yeah.
if they have made a decision on doing a third game, but because games take ages, it's not going to be for another 3-4 years.
They
Do
should
it
probably do that
afterwards.
though, because Ellie is
Give it a break.
significantly old. Ellie is
Yeah.
significantly older in series 2, and if they're going to do a third game potentially, characters are going to be older still. Um, doing it every year is kind of not necessarily going to work. I don't know, but
Also,
really
I'm a big fan of something just happening and being what it was and finishing with a finale. Like
yeah,
if they whether it's at 2 or whether it's at 3, I'd
yeah,
be very satisfied if this is 2 great seasons of TV. And I genuinely
yeah.
believe the first episode, I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago now. I think incredibly well made. Some of the things that were really linked to the game because I haven't played it were perhaps lost on me.
Hmm.
This third episode, no spoilers, everyone, don't worry. Phenomenal television,
Yeah,
cripplingly sad, but great, really, really good TV.
awesome. Really, really looking forward to watching this one. Um, and again, yeah, I don't think it's like either or. It's not like, oh, you need to play the game in order to enjoy the TV show, or if you played the game, the TV show's not for you. I've seen lots of conflicting ideas with that. I really enjoyed the bits when it goes, here's a bit, and this is exactly it's said in exactly the same way as it was in the game. Here's a moment from the TV show, which is directly ripped from the game. That's great. I love that stuff. However, it's nice to have different stuff as well. I think it's nice to have a nice mixture of that. I wouldn't expect it. You know, I played The Last of Us on PS3, on PS4, like remastered version. I've already played The Last of Us several times, and The Last of Us 2 several times. I've not played the PS5 version of The Last of Us Part 1 yet, but you know, it's a story I'm really familiar with. So if I'm gonna see, I don't necessarily just want to see a live action version of that story. It's nice to see different things.
What I think I'm going to do, Ben, is wait until I finish the series at this point, and then I'm going to play The Last of Us, probably the PS4 version because that's the one I have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to do loads of tweets saying, "Oh, just playing The Last of Us, and look at this bit I found. It's just like the TV
It's
series."
exactly the
And,
same.
and it's probably going to give someone who doesn't realize I'm taking the piss like a stroke. No,
Yeah.
it was on the game. Yeah.
Bloody hell, this game copies a TV show, doesn't it? Jesus, get your own ideas. I
But
think
yeah,
I've
good
also
TV.
heard that the game has sold loads of
Yeah, it upped its
additional
sales
units,
massively.
which is good, isn't it? If your sales are floundering, get a TV show out, isn't it? Okay, that is it for horror news. I guess now we move on to what must be your favorite section of the show, Andy. Usually, because you're
Recently, tell you what, before I do it, Ben, let's inject a little bit of sizzle for a discussion we may have in a few weeks' time. A
lovely.
little bit of horror news in the indie space.
Oh,
Tell you what, only friend of the show, I think we can say that, and former guest,
yes,
Janine
indeed.
Pipe, she wrapped filming on her own directorial debut just this weekend gone by. Her short film, Her, was filmed. If you're interested in that,
Very
having had Janine
exciting.
on the Silver Bullet episode with us a few months back, she's due to come back and join us again, and we'll give her a bit of quizzing, see how her experience has been stepping into the
Yeah,
world
I'd
of
love
making
to.
her first feature.
Would love to find out more about that. I think she's already planning her second short film as well, isn't she? So extremely exciting. We'll find out more from Janine, and she will be joining us in February for a special episode. We've not locked down. Well, we've locked down, but we've not announced the lineup yet. So
Save that for the end, shall we?
we could save that for the end. Why not? But actually,
Yeah.
by the time this episode's out, we will have announced it. So what are we on
Yeah.
about? We could say it. So obviously, a couple of new ones. We've got Skinamarink this week. It's the first time I've said the word Skinamarink out loud on this show. Feels weird. Then we're going to do another new film, Knock at the Cabin, the
Yeah.
new M. Night Shyamalan movie based on the Paul Tremblay novel, The Cabin at the End of the World. I think that's it. I've read that book. For some reason, I can't remember what it's called. I don't know why they've changed the title, you know. And then we're going to be doing some, well,
In an
Tremors.
unconfirmed order, Tremors.
Unconfirmed order.
One or the
Tremors.
other depends on availability. Tremors with Stuart Mulrain, host of the And Why Not podcast, and then Janine is going to come back for us for another bit of werewolf shenanigans.
Oh yeah, the most
Recently discovered
shenanigans.
favorite, Howling 2, Sheba bitch, your sister is a werewolf, full stop.
Go on. Christopher Lee as well.
Christopher Lee with some amazing wraparound shades.
He has been firmly in my head because I've been reading the Wicker Man book novelization, which came after the movie. Didn't know that until I picked it up. Yeah, and like Lord Summerisle in that is, they describe him, and I'm like, just Christopher Lee, just in my head constantly, and even the song about shagging the landlord's daughter, is in that book as well, which is probably my favorite moment of the Wicker Man.
You think if you hear a song that everyone's encouraging you to shag the landlord's daughter, just you bloody do it, Edward Woodward. Otherwise, you're going to be burned up in a Wickerman.
Edward Woodward. Yeah, but I'm glad you said Wickerman because I felt like I said it wrong then, Wickerman. I don't know if I'd ever do this because I'm sure we'll never ever run out of movies to cover. But if we ever get to a point where we're like, we should probably do a new episode on this film, The Wickerman would be a great movie to do because it's mad.
Yeah. Maybe
It's
we could
utterly mad.
come up with an excuse to do it. We'll do the new one.
Mm.
We'll do
That's
the
a good
new one,
idea.
then
Yeah. The bees.
we can harken back to the original.
It's a great idea. I might watch the remake. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time since I've seen it. What else have you been watching though?
So, what we've been watching? Have I said anything about what I've been watching? I've been reading
Oh
that.
yeah.
I've been playing Dead Space, which came out this week. Initially, I was like, I might wait a little bit, you know? I might wait a little bit. Not sure if I'm going to jump straight into it. But then I got the old FOMO, didn't I? I've already mentioned that. Um, but yeah, I saw everybody posting about it and playing. I was like, oh, I've got to go to Asda anyway. Other supermarkets are available. I've got to go to Asda to get some bits in, you know? I might as well just have a little look in the game aisle. If it's there, then it'll be a sign and it was there. So I
It was
got it,
there.
installed it, played it. I think it's one of those games where I have got such fond memories of Dead Space, and I've played all three of them like in the last 3 or 4 years. For me, it feels more like a remaster than a remake because it feels like a lot of the stuff is the same. Like the sound design is the same, the gameplay feels mostly the same. Sure, the visuals are by far and away like upgraded,
Mhm.
and it's probably not exactly the same layout and exactly the same story. Well, actually, it probably is the same story. It does feel like a remaster to me. Um, Maybe as I get further into the game, it'll start to feel more like a remake. But where something like Resident Evil 2 and 3 felt like an exact remake, sorry, it felt like a remake because it felt like a complete different game, telling the same story. This kind of feels like I feel like if you did do a side by side comparison, which I've seen a lot of videos and photos of, it's very easy to sort of say it's just a remaster. So I don't know how that makes me feel really, because I feel like I love the game enough to appreciate it, but I'm just thinking maybe other people who picked it up thinking it was going to be a totally different experience, maybe slightly disappointed. I don't know, but
Maybe.
it's had great reviews.
It's been long enough ago for me. I played Dead Space when it came out, what, 2008.
Mm.
Um, I've played all of that, all of two, and then I didn't ever finish three. I might be inspired to go back and do it from doing this
Yeah,
remake now. Haven't started it yet though because it had the misfortune of, well, I've been a bit busy, but and I do want to. I picked it up, it's installed, it's ready to go, but it was a lot quicker in the short amount of gaming time I had available to me in the last week to play a bit of GoldenEye on the Xbox instead. What a time!
lovely,
Not horror
lovely
related.
stuff.
I'll say no more about it, but what a lovely time it is.
How good is that pulls menu music, eh?
Oh, it's funky.
It's ever so funky. I picked up GoldenEye as well. I've had a little dabble. It is definitely one of those games where you're like, wow, I remember being pretty good at this, and then you're pretty much humbled straight away as you come to terms with like the controls, and as somebody who enjoys modern shooters, and you become so like I became so used to Doom and Doom Eternal and the way those games played
Mhm.
that going back to something like this is a bit of a culture shock where I do feel a bit like a little baby boy being given a controller for the first time. But yeah, I'll get there. Um, yeah, I mean, apart from that, I've not seen all that much this week. Apart from, I do have to watch Last of Us episode 3. I've watched Junji Ito Maniac.
Oh,
The
I've been looking forward to starting that. How is it?
oh oh, it's lovely. Oh, it's lovely. I mean, I cannot begin to describe how hard the soundtrack goes in this show. It's the opening credits music and the end credits music is insane. It's like math rock. It's like math, like anime math rock insanity. It's, I mean, just as insane as like the Junji Ito stories are. This the music is like, I was watching the opening credits, like just completely my jaw dropped. I was just like, what is going on? And it is just as insane as that. If you're a fan of like the manga stories of Junji Ito or anything like that from the, so there's a lot of his sort of greatest hits essentially. So it's like bizarre, terrifying, disturbing tales of Japanese macabre is how it's described. It's on Netflix at the moment, and some of the episodes are stronger than others, as I think you'll sort of find, because I guess it is kind of like an anthology series, isn't it? Um, but yeah, really, really creepy, genuinely terrifying. I mean, Junji Ito, if you're familiar with him at all, a lot of body horror, a lot of heads, severed heads, creepy
Lots of
big
eyes about the
heads,
place.
loads of eyes, hair. Um,
How long are the
yeah,
episodes?
25 minutes.
Well, that's not bad.
I think there's 12 episodes, so I haven't seen it all yet. I think I've seen about half of it, possibly. Um, but yeah, I hugely recommend it if you're a fan of. Well, it's great for if you're a fan of horror anthologies, or any sort of like Asian horror as well, or manga. I think if your only familiarity with Asian horror is stuff like The Grudge and The Ring and things like that, you're gonna have a good time with this. But if you got a little bit more experience in that realm of things, then you're gonna enjoy some of these stories. Some really, really interesting characters and some genuinely like horrific moments. A lot of stuff where you're like, Jesus, that was a bleak ending. pretty much
I
pretty
need
much
to. I need to
pretty much
I need
every
to catch
episode.
up with it.
Yeah. I need to finish it. Look forward to finishing it. And the only other horror related thing I've seen is The Keep. So I read the book recently. So the book is written by F. Paul Wilson. He did comment on my Facebook post because I tagged his official author page and said, just diving into this and then going to dive into the film. No bother. And he was like, you may notice a distinct difference between the book and the film. And I felt like the way he said it was like, I don't like the film. That's kind of the way he said it. And I think I completely agree. The book is great at like creating this dread and atmosphere, and it's kind of like Nazi. Do you know much about The Keep?
It's
Like an eight.
I may
It's
have
like an
seen
eight.
it, but is it got old Magneto himself in it, Ian McKellen?
Yeah, Ian McKellen's
Ian
in it.
McKellen and a spooky skull, and the Nazis are after their castle.
Yeah, so the book is more vampire-y,
Okay.
although it's kind of like vampire-y slash some sort of being, some sort of like otherworldly being, and it's been around for millennia. It just feels like so Michael Mann directs the film. It feels like everything that the book did well at like really drawing out and taking its time with, it feels like it's all just jammed into 90 minutes. There's like a couple of relationships that kind of just immediately start, whereas in the book they feel a bit more believable. I guess obviously with a book you've got
Got all the
never ending,
space.
you've got all the space in the world, and genuinely like quite terrifying, whereas the film felt a bit cheesy, although the soundtrack is by Tangerine Dream, including a version of the song Walking in the Air, made famous by Alid Jones, of the
Isn't that a
Snowman.
Mandela effect thing? Is it not him?
Is it not him?
I don't think it's really him. I think we all just think it's him.
Yeah, song by Alid Jones, Walking in the
Oh,
Air.
there we
Little
go.
kid. Are we trying to say that he mimed over like an actual person who could sing?
Or maybe it's just not him singing it in the song, in
Okay,
the film. But there was some.
got you.
It doesn't
He
matter. It's not
covered
the
it.
snowman. It's not the snowman
He
hangout.
covered it. But in this movie, the Tangerine Dream soundtrack has got a really good version of Walking in the Air, to the point where I was like, "Is that Walking in the Air?" But then I found it. I found it on YouTube, and I was listening to it. I was like, "It's really nice. Like it's just like an instrumental. It's not like no one's singing over it." But Tangerine Dream, I don't think they ever really missed, do they? Um, yeah, I think
Oh,
it's
bloody
it's probably
bullseye, mate.
I gave someone bullseye. I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more if I hadn't just read the book, because I really, really did enjoy the book. Had a great time with it. I'm kind of working my way through these battered old horror paperbacks that I'm finding on eBay. So I've got a copy of The Fog. I'm reading The Wicker Man. And I just finished The Keep, and I think I'm just going to find as many
Battered
old
old horror.
smelly.
That feels like wanting old copies of that seems like the way to go. Even better if they've got like a little price tag on from like
Perfect. They've
a
got a
book
price tag.
a book sale at like a stately home.
Yeah, exactly. That would be ideal. And I guess the only other movie I'll mention, which isn't a horror movie, but I'll mention it anyway. Babylon, the new movie from Damien Chazelle, starring Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie. You've probably seen a trailer for it. That big
Yeah.
bombastic set in Hollywood sort of movie. Um, absolutely loved it, and I did enjoy La La Land as well. I watched this in a really strange way because so we watched it when we were in Denmark. We went into a cinema. It was a freezing cold day. We're like, should we just go to the cinema for a few hours, just warm up? And we went in, and it was a cinema that I don't think was really aimed at tourists as much. It was very much like for Danish people, because not many people spoke English there. And we ended up going in the wrong screen and watching the second half of the movie Babylon without realizing. So we watched the second half, and I was like, "This is really disjointed. I
Who's
don't
that
understand
fella?
who's that fella." And I was like, and I think it's 3.5. I think it's 3 hours long, but I was like, it feels like it's winding down. And then we realized that we'd walked into the wrong screen, the only other screen that was showing the movie, and we just happened to walk into it and get half of it. So we just hung around for a bit longer and went back in and watched the first half. So we watched it like backwards. But even watching it backwards, I really loved it. And Margot Robbie, I think it's like one of her best roles, and she's great in like everything. But
Give yourself
I
like a
just,
Christopher Nolan experience watching it there,
yeah,
mate.
yeah, exactly. I did say that. I said it's like memento. We're doing a memento on it or something. Yeah, for a film I didn't know much about and pretty much had no interest in because I didn't know much about it. I would say amazing. And Tobey Maguire's in it.
I do want to see. Is he got some horrible teeth in that though?
He's got some marble teeth. Looks like he's never brushed, never had a toothbrush near those toufy pegs ever in his life. Ever so yellow.
I do want to. I do want to see Babylon. It looks great.
Yeah, yeah, definitely check it out. That's it from me. Unless you've got like a massive, never-ending list of stuff you've
Got
seen.
a little bonanza. It's been a little bit easier. TV. We've talked about The Last of Us. I'm carrying on with Chucky. And I've been carrying on with some more classic episodes of 1990s The Outer Limits.
Oh
One
yeah.
about some, it's called, I think it's called Twin Souls. It's about some aliens.
So
They come
you're not
from.
watching you're not watching this in order then. You're kind of just
No, I'm
picking and
just like I
choosing.
am watching them in order, but
Okay.
I'm watching them in release order, but they're all standalone things.
Okay.
So one of them is about these
Makes
aliens that
sense.
come and they're like parasitic, ghosty aliens that can go into dead human bodies. You
Hmm.
know what? Slight spoilers for a thing that's over 20 years old, but um, turns out all the paranoids for nothing. They're just nice, um,
Oh.
and that's a fun one. And then I
What's
most
that one
recently
called?
watched. I think it's called Twin Souls.
Okay.
It's just like 40 minutes. And then the second one, the most recent one I watched, is another one I actually had very vivid memories of watching as a kid, which is one there's horrible old man, and he's over 100 and he's on death's door, and he's big rich man, and he's funding the construction of an artificial heart, and he says a little something that has aged a little bit, whereas like, oh well, everyone have there's everyone in three people's got a wife and kid, but has anyone else in the world got 1.2 billion dollars? And I'm like, yeah.
Wow.
People rinsing up more than that up the wall for a social media platform these days. But in very vivid memories where like he is trying to grip onto life at the expense of other people, and
Yeah.
obviously he's going to learn a lesson along the way.
Is is
Um,
this streaming somewhere? Is this
no, this is an old collection I have.
That's
I'm like, oh,
exciting.
I'm gonna watch through these.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um, it probably is streaming somewhere. I just happen to have some physical media.
Oh, amazing. So this is the 90s one as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, the '90s one. I do want to go back and watch the '60s one eventually to its
Hmm.
original roots as well, because
Cool.
I do love a little standalone series. And I started on the '60s Twilight Zones a little while ago. Really, really good storytelling in some of these.
Hmm.
I did also blitz a few films again though, because continuing on this little role, my marathon training.
Nice.
Um, so I watched There's Something Wrong with the Children, a new release. This one is on VOD. You can watch it on Apple and Amazon, Sky Movies as well, I think, in this country right now. By Roxanne Benjamin as your director. You have Zach Gilford of Midnight Mass fame as one of your lead characters. Do a little
Nice.
synopsis of this as it's a new release, everybody.
Yeah,
Margaret
go
and
on.
Ben take a weekend trip with longtime friends Ellie and Thomas and their two young children. Eventually, Ben begins to suspect something supernatural is occurring when the kids behave strangely after disappearing into the woods overnight. I caught a trailer for it and it
Hmm.
looked interesting, and yeah, there's some good stuff to be had here. It really leans into the um, a debate that seems to become more and more fierce between certainly people of our age and slightly younger Ben. Those people who have chosen to have children versus choosing not to have children, and the kind
Hmm.
of resentments that sometimes come between those groups of people in friendship groups in particular. And there is some sinister, ugly stuff going on. It didn't pay out exactly how I was expecting it to, which was nice and refreshing. Um, it has a good sort of Twilight Zone episode vibe to it, but it's a feature length movie, and there are some really good
Hmm.
performances, and there are some really great moments where you're watching and you will gasp, thinking like, and it's not even monster related stuff. It's like when their relationship starts to break down because of what's going on, and people come out with some stuff. Genuinely wins like, oh, I can't believe we just said that. Oh no.
Oh God.
Um, Yeah, and this was one for me that hung on a knife edge. Was it going to have disappointed me or satisfy me with the ending? And it stuck the landing for me. I quite enjoyed it.
Oh, nice. That's good to
So
hear.
yeah, that was that. I then went and found something that I'm now describing as a stone cold classic. I might need to let it rest a little bit, and then
Okay.
we might have to watch it sometime. I think I might even text you about it. Dead and Buried, 1981.
Oh yeah.
Um, They'll take your breath away after a series of gory murders committed by mobs of townspeople against visiting tourists. The corpses appear to be coming back to life and living normally as
Oh,
locals in a small town. Um, Great. It's on Shudder. Um, get
oh
and watch
sweet.
it. I
Okay.
don't believe that we haven't seen this, unless I've just happened. It has, and I've missed it. Don't believe we haven't seen a remake of it. The one content warning I will give anyone who's thinking about watching this is if you have particularly fond memories of kindly old Grandpa Joe from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, well, hold on to those while you still can,
Oh my
everybody,
god.
because he's a bit of a villain in this.
Oh no.
But
He's
it's
a bit of a
really
villain.
good.
He's a bit of a villain in Charlie the Chocolate Factory, really, isn't he? Like just like leaps up out of bed after being in bed for like 2 decades.
All right, the Department of Work and Pensions.
Oh, I thought you. What's that? I thought your legs don't work. Oh yeah, as soon as you get a golden ticket, oh, you're well up for it.
Yeah, well,
Jesus.
the malnutrition you've been suffering, I guess he's won a lifetime supply of chocolate, but he's going to get his calories in at least.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Dead and Buried is really good for my money. Like genuinely gory, some really unsettling bits in it.
Hmm.
Yeah, get and watch it. We'll talk about it another time. Um,
Lovely.
a film that has been one of both yours and Luke's favorites, and I've been really slow in watching it. But after another Ben Wheatley movie last week, finally got around to watching The Kill List. It's pretty good, isn't it?
Did you? Was that the first
Yeah,
time you've seen the Kill List,
yeah.
or just
First time
Kill
I've seen
List?
The
Sorry.
Kill List.
Oh wow, absolutely
It
love
was
that
good.
film. Oh yeah, it's great, isn't it? Don't want to spoil anything, but how did that end impact you?
It's pretty harsh times, isn't it?
Pretty harsh times. Also, one of the best magic tricks in cinema, I think, when he says abracadabra and just rips. Horrible that scene. I feel like something that I found has definitely affected me is like awkward arguments between like couples, or like where one couple's arguing and the other couple are like kind of not arguing. That is incredibly tense
Yeah.
in any sense. It's just
It's
in
so
real life and not.
so uncomfortable to watch several moments. It's a film that had me on edge the entire time. Really, really good. Really great movie.
Mm.
Even
Yeah,
deeply unpleasant, but really good.
deeply unpleasant. One of the most realistic hammerhead smashes ever put
Yeah.
to film as well, right?
Smashing all sorts of that with that bloke. He's a bad man.
He's a bad man. Yeah, really weird, mysterious, and like folk horror as well. I think it's one of my favorites. I think definitely got to check it out.
He gets tricked though, doesn't he, in the end? Tell you what, put a sheet over something and duct tape a knife to your hands.
I'm just
Been
gonna
in a,
stab it. All right, I'm just gonna
been in a
stab it.
stressful
Whatever happens.
situation.
Yeah. Anything
You'd have
else?
gone around that. You'd have gone around that circle, stabbing all the people that had kept you there,
Yeah, you would.
teamed up.
I ain't fighting
Um,
this hunchback.
I'll
Leave the
stab
hunch.
you, mate. You're the one that
Leave
got
the,
me here.
leave the hunchback out of it.
Um, yeah, so that was that. Another couple. I watched Inseminoid. It is a 1981 film by Norman J. Warren. It's about aliens putting a baby in you and turning you to a murderous alien hybrid pregnant woman.
Ah,
Um, I tell you what,
Seminoids.
they will tell you then that in space no one can hear you scream. Not if you're an Inseminoid, because a lot of people scream an awful lot of
Oh
screaming
wow.
going on there. Um, Other props to this movie. There's a brilliant line where there's a lady that's trapped and she goes, "Gary, I can't do it." And Gary, who's on the radio, says, "I don't understand the meaning of the word. You can't give up." And it was like, "You just said you don't understand the meaning of the word and then used it in the following sentence, Gary."
Oh
And
yeah.
you want to
Come on,
reflect on that?
Gary, you
Yeah.
absolute weapon.
Spoilers, slight spoilers for Inseminoid. Um, the lady's absolutely right. She can't do it and she perishes. But she's only a minor character. Um, Again, really gory but super low budget. it does feel like it's very early 80s. It's like a 70s sci-fi show that you catch on the BBC, but gory and with all kinds of murders going on up in space and some fantastic early 80s hair.
Awesome.
Then I watched 1993's Maniac Cop 3, Badge of Silence, finishing up my
Wait,
very protracted
a
watch of that
bad
series.
badge of silence. If we said
Badge of
badge of
Silence.
silence.
No, it's not Silence of Badgers. It is a
Oh,
badge.
she's badger. Just shut up, mate. Well, I got just a maniac cop for you. Is it the same guy? Oh, the chin himself, not Bruce
Um,
Campbell.
it's not Bruce Campbell because he was, but it is still old Matt Cardle.
That's it.
Is
Yeah,
still yeah.
Matt Cardle of X Factor fame. Got you.
Yeah, and I tell you what, when collides, he does come together. All the criminals, if they don't come together, they'll fall apart. So yeah, they'll he's at it again, doing some more maniac cop things in a kind of is he bad, is he good? Changes quite often. He gets resurrected by a voodoo man.
Oh,
But so he's after being put at peace in the last one. So he's back again. It's better than it has any business being, if I'm honest. It should
yeah.
be terrible, but you know what? It's great. There's one bit where this man comes over. He's being all cheeky because like he's got some problems with the police, and he's saying to them, you guys doing this? I don't think the police are very good." Actually, getting in his face, and then he doesn't realize that it's a bloody maniac cop, does he? Turns around, realizes it's Matt Cardle, and then he throws him in the air like a clay pigeon, and then basically like bah, 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 and like shoots him as he flies through the air, and then he falls down. He the stuntman or the actor like oofs as he falls to the ground, but then is clearly dead, shot to pieces. He's like oof, but it's dead.
His last
Um,
his last moments.
just his last breath, I guess, has been pumped out. And then finally, I also on Shudder, load of good stuff on Shudder recently. I'm trying to get through a bit of stuff on
Wow,
there, really
yeah.
get the most out of that. I watched 1981's early 80s week, to be honest. Watched Hell Night, which is a Tom DeSimone film. Just some college pledges forced to spend the night in a deserted old mansion where they get killed off one by one by the monstrous surviving members of a family massacre years early for trespassing on their living grounds. Just a haunted, in inverted commas, house. There's pretty bad blokes that live there.
Isn't the Hell Knight like one of the bad guys from Doom, if I remember correctly?
That is, but it's without a K, so it's not a member of
Oh, I see. Oh, I've
Hell's
got you. I've got
nobility.
you.
It's just
No.
an evening of hell, if you
An
like.
evening of hell. A night of hell. Interesting. Okay. Loads of
But,
awesome stuff there.
classic 80s fare. Yeah,
As
if I was
always,
recommending one thing for you, Ben, and everyone else, Dead and Buried.
Dead or Buried. Yeah, I've already added it to my list, Andy, as I do during this section of every podcast episode. Add
But
stuff
I'm going
to
to
the
carry
list.
on marathoning until you get sick of hearing about them or caught up on that watch list.
Or Andy completes horror. Okay. So, apart from that, we have watched the film of the week, which was a fairly last minute little jig around in terms of what we were going to watch because it's out today on Shudder. Now, obviously, if you listen to this after the release date, it still is available on Shudder.
Yeah, it's not just a one day thing.
It's not just a one day thing, one day exclusive. It's available from here on until the end of time. Maybe not the end of time, but you never know. So today's movie is Skinamarink. That's fun to say. Is a 2022 Canadian experimental horror film written and directed by Kyle Edward Ball in his featured directorial debut. The film follows two children who wake up during the night to discover that they cannot find their father and that the windows, doors, and other objects in their house are disappearing. I think it's based on a short film called Heck, which was kind of like a proof of concept for this.
It's available on YouTube right now as well.
Available
So
on
if you want to
YouTube.
see that, the experiment from the director is available for you to watch.
Yeah. It's shot on digital in Ball's childhood home in Edmonton, Canada. Not that's I mean that's kind of interesting, the fact that he just shot in his childhood home. So what can we say about this film? IMDb 5.4 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, 72% critic score, 43% audience score. Letterboxd, 3.1 out of 5. Now, I've got some choice reviews here. I tried to have a nice cross section of this just to give this film a fair deal. Don't want to be unfair to it at all. So, Freyer says, reduced me to a child, hand over my mouth, tears in my eyes, pit in my stomach, surreal and familiar in the same stroke. 5 stars. Matt Lynch says, I really appreciate the swing here. It's gorgeous and the vibes are just terrific, but it's fucking boring. I'm so sorry. 2.5 stars. And then David Delrich. Imagine if someone made an entire movie out of the last shot of the Blair Witch Project or a creepypasta remake of Home Alone. 3 stars. So probably like a bit of a cross section of that there. I guess things that I've seen it described as being like lo-fi horror, elevated horror, which I guess most of what A24 puts out is described as that, analog horror. I've seen loads of stuff like this. All these kind of like words that are, I guess, supposed to make us think that this is a new, possibly a new wave of horror for the year ahead. And also, I've seen this quite polarizing. A lot of people seem to say, what an absolute waste of time. It's boring. Nothing happens. It's just, crap. It's this is not me saying this. This is me saying what
These
people
aren't
are
Ben's
saying.
words, everyone.
These aren't my words. Don't
Take
put
this
words
out
in
of
my mouth.
context.
And other people are also saying like that it's absolutely amazing. It really captures. I've seen some people say it captures that childhood fear of like your own home, which you do have, like in the dark, and that moment when you wake up after a nightmare as a kid, and you kind of you feel around the walls to find the light, or trying to go to your parents' house, or every shadow in the darkness of a place, a haven, which is your childhood home, is suddenly full of all these creepy shapes. And I think for us watching it, but in the grain and the sort of things that are out of focus and these long lingering shots, you are constantly looking for something in the darkness.
Right.
But I think it's because modern horror movies have kind of done that to us. They've made us feel accustomed to it. Things like Haunted of Hill House, where you're like, there's a little ghosty here and there. But I think, yeah, I mean, I won't say what I think of it, but what I'm saying is it has polarized people immensely. It did premiere in theaters in the US. We haven't got anything like that in the UK at the moment. It's available on Shudder now. I feel like if you watched it at the cinema, it may have been a completely different experience to if you just watched it in your living room with every other distraction in the world.
This is one for me, actually. We were talking last week with Ed about the couple of things that are relevant to this film, actually. But one of them was the cinema experience, because M. Night had been on saying, my new film is designed to be watched in the cinema with an audience, not on your tablet. I'm going to argue that
On your bloody
I think
tablet.
that the best way to watch Skinamarink is probably on like your laptop or like a small TV right next to your bed in the night. Imagine that, like, because there's certain bits, and that we'll talk as we go through the film. For anyone who has no idea what to expect, it's going to be hard for us to do the usual narrative breakdown that we would, because there's not a huge amount of narrative to pull out of this, right? It's very, very stark in that sense. But one thing it does very skillfully, it reminds me of the days of when we were teacher training. One of the teachers said to us, hey, if you want a group of kids, or you want people to listen and they're talking amongst themselves, don't shout louder, speak more quietly, because then they'll have to like lean in and listen. I feel that film does it very effectively. There are several moments where I almost went back and did a scene again. I probably added a good few minutes to the runtime, because you hear something said, and sometimes it gives you a visual on that, but other times it doesn't. And you semi catch something that's been said, or you think there's been a sound, in the same way that you're craning your eyes and
Mm.
squinting to look for things in the shadows that may or may not be there. There'll be something audible, and I found myself like cranking the volume a little bit, leaning in to listen to
Were you
what it
not
was.
were you not worried though that it was just going to try and I mean, again, another reason that the modern horror movies are kind of. I know I'm not throwing modern horror movies under the bus. I think for the most part, modern horror movies are great. There's just a type of modern horror movie which the jump scare is used as the main form of sort of of creating some sort of atmosphere and genuine fear and horror in a movie. So that when a film is quiet like that, and I kind of feel myself leaning in, and suddenly, rather than there being like static noise or like residual noise, it goes silent. I'm like, no, I don't trust you now. I
That's
don't
the thing, though,
trust you. I'm not going to lean in.
because this one didn't have ambient music and violin stings and
Yeah,
throughout. And the couple of jumps that do occur, it's when you get like a smash cut, like mid sentence. There's one bit where one of the kids was like in the middle of saying what I assume was what was that, and they get as far as what was, and then we just get just like a sharp snap to another shot,
yeah.
and that like makes a thud and
I
makes
mean,
you jump.
it's very very unconventional. I think it's gonna polarize a lot of. I think a lot of general moviegoers and horror fans are going to be immediately put off by
Oh
like
yeah,
the first 30 minutes of this. I think maybe an hour and 40 minutes is perhaps a bit too much. Like I feel like I've got a lot of patience and I really like atmospheric stuff. And in places it reminded me of Silent Hill, in places it reminded me of the Blair Witch Project, Poltergeist in a way. It's not really found footage, is it? But it's kind of got that kind of look. I guess we're supposed to believe it's some
it's
level
kind
of
of
found footage.
it's kind of designed like found footage, but it's not directly any of the characters we have operating the camera. So it's not found footage with, like a layer of reality to it. We don't see someone operating a camera.
No. It's like a fever
Sometimes we're
it's
in the
like a fever
perspective,
dream, isn't
yeah.
it?
It is like exactly like a dream. And I think that's what the director has come out and said. Like it's based on childhood nightmares, and it does have that nightmarish, surreal quality to it, I think.
It
Um,
does. I think it just needed I needed a slightly shorter run time and a little bit of a narrative structure just to hang your hat on.
yeah,
Just to make it easier, not necessarily easier to follow, but a little bit more engaging. And I think a lot of the stuff that it does, which is quite creepy, some of the visuals and reveals are quite good. Um, I felt like it just would have earned that a bit more.
yeah.
As for that, I just find myself almost becoming a tad frustrated at times with where I kind of wanted more from it. I wanted certain plot threads, or not even plot threads, but certain. It dangled a little carrot in front of you. We're like, oh, okay, are we going to see something now? Or, oh, wow, that's creepy. That's the back of someone's head. Are we going to turn around and see? But I didn't want like a big turn and a big scary face or something like that. That's not what I wanted. Because considering the ending of Blair Witch Project is one of my favorite horror moments, and that's not a big scary face screaming at the camera, which we've seen in dozens and dozens and dozens of horror movies.
Yeah.
That's not really what I wanted, but I don't know. I just felt, yeah, maybe a little bit a little bit frustrated. It was like the horror movie version of edging. We
Yeah.
just like, come on, give me something, give me something. No, you can't have
Oh,
anything.
almost
Can't have
no,
anything
nothing
now.
actually. Denied. Um,
Tonight.
yeah, you're right. And I think if you're talking about this for a general audience, and I'm not saying this that I'm then following what said, but for an elevated audience, like me, true horror fans will understand. I'm not saying that at all. But I think from a commercial point of view, um, would you would a general audience look at this on a broad release? Is your average your normie's going to go and watch this and say, oh no,
Mm.
this is because conventionally it doesn't have the storytelling elements that are
Yeah,
front
I
and
mean,
center that an
it's
audience are
good.
going to expect.
It's going to struggle. I was in an audience with Hereditary on the release weekend, and people were scoffing and people were like, "This is a
Don't
load
know
of
what
nonsense.
happened.
What's even happening? What's this about?" Yeah. So,
Yeah. So it's
um,
going to struggle in that sense. But I think I described it to you before we started. It has the vibe of watching an art installation as much as it does watching a movie, right? It has a message, but it's not overtly presented to you. And there are bits of it that there is a narrative, and we can rattle through it fairly quickly, but it's not
yeah.
directly presented. And let's look at it. Like, I had a quick look at the production. 15 grand this film
And
cost to
that was
make.
just a bloody Lego, mate. That was a Lego. Lego's expensive these days, all right?
Lego,
Especially,
and he had to travel to his parents' house in Edmonton. Um,
and he lives
get your
in
bus ticket.
Australia.
Yeah, yeah. So it made on an incredibly small budget, and I understand with a limited release in the US, it's made a hair under 2 million so far. So financially, a great success. Is this a
Oh yeah.
successful experiment in storytelling? Yes, it's found an audience, and people are
Mm.
talking about it, us included.
Yeah, and I think, as a podcast, and I guess as film critics to a degree, I think one thing I'm always keen to say, because there have been times when I've negatively bashed something or someone based on their filmmaking prowess. What I will say is that, like, making a film and putting a film out deserves every plaudit in the world, because I understand as a process it must be incredibly difficult, and especially for something so original and experimental as what this is. I completely I was gonna say tip my hat to that, but I've already said something about hanging a hat on something. I feel like I can't
Too
keep
much hat talk.
too much hat talk. It's because I've got a hat on. I've always got a hat on. But what I will say, without trying to be too negative, I will say that, like, everything that I enjoy about movies, not everything I enjoy about movies, but most of what I enjoy about movies is absent here. I feel like I
Okay.
do enjoy um some level of plot and mystery, and sort of a slowly unraveling plot,
And
or
some
just
payoff,
something,
right?
and some payoff. Yeah, I do enjoy that. And as I said, I just felt frustrated by the whole process, really,
Um,
especially when I've seen so many people saying such good things about it. I was really interested to see what we were going to see. um and yeah.
yeah, and that's fine. I think I was talking about this with Ed last week. Actually, ratings are a very difficult thing. The very fact that whether you're on a letterbox system that is there's like using stars, or our old school grade systems as well, it's nigh impossible to compare um, films on an equal playing field. Like an independent experimental piece, can you necessarily rate that in the same on the same scale as you would
Yeah, that's true.
an absolute blockbuster, or things of a completely different genre, something more established, something which is your
Yeah.
favorite? And the thing I was talking about with that is, like, in many ways, the ratings I now give films when I'm here, when I'm on Letterboxd, when I'm wherever, tend to be just how much I've enjoyed them, which is
Mm.
quite often completely divorced from the actual quality of the filmmaking.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And sometimes, as we say all the time, and I know you said with Ed last week, having a chat about it can kind of make you appreciate a lot about it even more, when you kind of reminisce about certain things you enjoyed with like-minded, or sometimes not like-minded. Sometimes people might think
Sometimes
completely
an
different.
enemy might say that they have a
A
different
bloody
opinion to you.
enemy might go, "I love that film,"
You
and I go, "I love that film
can
too,"
hate
but
it.
you're a twat, all right?
Anything you like, ugh, scoff.
Ugh, scoff. Um,
Um, I tell you what, let's get into it, shall we? And then we'll see how our opinions land at the end.
mm.
Um, I mean, yeah, well, the plot is fairly quick. My first note is that we begin with an unholy alliance on screen straight away, going into the unsettling nature from the very beginning. Lego and Duplo in the same area.
Yeah, what was going on with that? That was weird. Was it actually Lego as well? Or was
I
it
didn't look for
both?
brand names, but it looked like there was both Lego and Duplo together as one.
Basically, you're setting yourself up for some level of this is the thing. Demonic, supernatural, ghostly, do we know? Like so Skinamarink is like a
It's
schoolyard
like an American
song,
folk song, right? Like a
American folk song, which is apparently like gibberish, right? It's a
I
load of bloody
only
gibberish.
think of I've never actually heard the song Skinamarink, showing my lack of awareness of American culture, but it just reminds me of the "Oh my goodness, oh my damn" video, the guy with the burger.
Oh my
Skinnamarink,
goodness. Oh my
dinky,
damn. Oh
Skinnamarink.
my goodness. They're going ham.
That's it. He sings a bit of that. Maybe that's why I'm assuming Skinnamarink is. Um, so yeah, and let's talk about the framing here. We already said it is presented as found footage, but it isn't really because there's no one operating a camera. The
No.
angles are, it's like there's a static camera that's just capturing a view of the film. If it's anything watching, maybe it's the ghost's eye view. And we're just,
Mm.
until the very end at least, they are still framed shots, but unusually framed. It's like, the look across a room or the corner of a TV or, the at ground level and you see the feet of the
Yeah.
two children in the film walking past,
Yeah.
all very untraditionally framed, which has that dreamlike element to it. I tell you what, this put me in the mind of as well, Ben. Have you seen? I know Luke recommended it, and that's why I watched it. Come True. Have you watched Come True?
No. No, I didn't get around to that one.
Also on Shudder. Um, that is very focused on nightmares. Um, Luke isn't
Hmm.
here to say this himself, but I remember him telling me watching Come True gave Luke nightmares.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's about them. It's about the main character is a girl, and she meets other people along the way that joins a sleep experiment, and
Hmm.
the scientists, as part of that experiment, are looking at the contents of people's dreams and nightmares, and they're finding ways to record them, and they look at shared dreams. And as part of it, you have the computer imagery generating what these people are dreaming in their nightmares,
Oh, wow,
and it
okay.
has that quality about it. The angles and the geometry aren't quite right, and there's some
Hmm.
conceptually it takes what this film has, and there is a sinister force in these dreams, and it'd be an excellent pairing with this movie. In fact, I would recommend Come True has recently also come on to Shudder. So, you know what? If you're on there watching Skinamarink, if this has taken your interest, watch both. I would say maybe Skinamarink first because that one has Come True has more of a narrative and characters that you'll meet that you can follow through, but
Uh-huh.
some of the same unsettling imagery. But the only thing really I would say in this beginning section, the only thing that I see some people who are discussing this movie that are kind of clinging to a potential standard explanation. There are two kids, Kaylee and Kevin.
Kaylee and Kevin. Yeah, that's right.
Kaylee and Kevin.
And you don't
And
ever really see them, do you?
no, not in full. You see the back of Kevin's head and the side of Kevin's head on occasions.
Yeah.
Um,
Don't trust him. Don't trust either of them. Can I just
no,
have a look at your face? Let me see you. No,
no,
no. Well, I don't
don't.
trust you. Why are you so evasive? It'd be annoying if you're in this film. You're like, I'm in that film, and you watch it, you go, are you?
Oh yeah, didn't
Don't
recognize you. Could be anyone with
recognize
kids
it.
back of
Yeah,
their
there
head.
you are.
This is the only really explanation we get. We hear but don't properly catch sight of their dad
Uh-huh.
talking on the phone to someone, possibly the kid's mom. Like it's not made expressly clear, but he basically says Kevin fell down the stairs and banged his head. Don't worry, he's fine. Kaylee says he was sleepwalking.
Hurt his crown,
And
and then you had to put brown paper and
vinegar and
vinegar on
brown
it.
paper. Right, yeah. So could I've seen it posed by some that the nightmare sequences we have from here are tied to Kevin sleepwalking if he is a sleepwalker,
Yeah.
or
Maybe this is all
potentially
he's in a
intensified
coma.
by his head injury, but he has banged
Yeah.
his head. But then again, other people have thrown that away and said, this is probably just a thing that happened. They're playing hide
Yeah.
and seek at night
It's
at the beginning,
very
and that's just they tell their dad.
it's very Lynchian, isn't it? I think it's very David Lynch. I feel like if like extended nightmare sequences from anything David Lynch has put out, were allowed to go for an hour and 40 minutes. I feel like this is the kind of thing that we probably would
Yeah.
have got. Just these really unnerving, unsettling, but incredibly dragged out, you know, moments that are designed to make. I think they're designed to make you look uneasy and maybe a little bit
Yeah.
annoyed. They're
Because I
designed to
mean,
make you feel like that.
this for anyone who hasn't watched it or anyone who won't watch it or anyone you know that's going through this, in that bit we just described, that is about 15 minutes of 15 minutes plus of movie, right? Just
Yeah.
shots of about 20 to 30 seconds looking at the Lego, looking down the corridor into the dark,
That's why you
looking
know
from
it.
the top of the stairs to the bottom.
That's why you notice it's Lego and Duplo because you're just looking at it for so long. Like I feel
Yeah.
like in my head, I put it together and took it apart again at least 4 or 5 times.
Master builder, you like plan all the things you can make with it. Um, so I mean that's where we are, and then the kids wake up and the dad is just gone. You hear them looking for him and they can't find him. But the doors to we see a door disappear.
Yeah,
We see a door disappear, and we eventually come to understand that the doors that allow you to leave the house are gone,
yeah,
along with their dad, and the two children opt to sleep downstairs. There is a brief mention of the mom. They say, "Where's dad? Has he gone with mom?" And the older of the children, Kaylee, says, "I don't want to talk about
don't
mom.
want to talk about mum. Yeah, which kind of makes you think, maybe she's dead or something like that,
Dead,
or
left."
left something like that. And I guess it was kind of heartbreaking in a way because you're thinking of kids of a certain age, like it must be like if they're because kids must get left in these sort of situations, where parents like leave the house and stuff and they wake up and they're alone in the house. And you're too young to kind of really understand what's happening. So you're just sort of left alone and abandoned. And it was kind of heartbreaking thinking how scared they must be and the way they communicate with each other as well, like ever so quietly. And the dialogue is incredibly sporadic as
Yeah,
well. There's a lot of silence where obviously they're just scared and they're just kind of thinking, and then they've got the TV on and they're watching some old cartoons.
some
I feel like
royalty-free cartoons.
some royalty-free cartoons. What are
I've
you
seen
watching? I'm just
another.
watching.
There's one in particular with the spiders that was on something else I watched in the last week, and I can't think of what it was. Maybe it's in Dead and
Oh wow,
Buried,
okay,
but there's an old
I see.
cartoon. I had it on VHS when I was a kid. I could have been a Skinamarink.
You could have been a
The one
bloody
in particular
Skinamarink,
where there's
mate.
it's like a spider hotel, and some flies go to this hotel, and they're
Ah,
the
I see.
beds are made of spider webs, and they're all stuck to they're all
Mm,
stuck to the beds. There's a couple of moments, and again, I've seen theories written up on this because this was a film that I came away and thought, right, I need to try and understand this. Let's see what people are
yeah.
writing. Those film scholars, what are they talking about on this one? And there is a
Yeah.
claim that the cartoons are potentially being generated by the entity to taunt them, but
Yeah.
secondarily are either that or they're just thematically tied to what's happening.
Generated to
So
taunt them. Wow. What
there's
could be
one bit just after.
what could what could be generated to taunt you if you were stuck in a Skinamarink like scenario?
I mean, only a royalty-free cartoon. Obviously, they're not going to put them.
Yeah,
They're
that's
not
true.
accessing Disney Plus and
They're
putting
not
anything like that.
accessing the James Corden show or James Corden's performance in Cats to try
No, they're
and
not. They're
really.
not getting those because they are protected by copyright, and I'm not sure even demonic forces want that kind of litigious
No.
response. Um,
No.
but uh, yeah, I don't know what. I guess probably the films they choose here because just when they start looking for the dad, the
Mm.
cartoon that they're showing shows some birds that look like they're carrying another bird off on what looks like a stretcher or a coffin in a
Yeah,
very
like a
solemn way.
gurney or something. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit where there's like a little boy attracting loads of birds to him with seed. There's a bit where there is a spider and the flies are like stuck in the webs. And there's a
Mm.
bit where things are disappearing, where there is like a recurring re-record, don't fade away clip of a rabbit making itself disappear,
Yeah.
like a magic
But
rabbit.
some of this could mean absolutely nothing to some people watching it,
Oh yeah,
and other people would be like, I'm going to read into every single visual to try and see how it represents the story. And until we get the director confirming or denying, I don't think we're
yeah.
gonna really know, are we?
It's just there are things that I've seen people claim could be
Hmm.
tied to it, but again, it could just be background noise because the kids are downstairs watching these. They're basically watching cartoons. More time seems to pass, and they haven't found their dad. Then I tell you what, bit of light relief. That demon having trapped these kids there. We've talked about the thematic things about talking about kids who were abandoned or parents have disappeared.
Mm.
Bit of light relief though. The demon makes the toilet disappear, dickhead. Oh,
That's a laugh,
all
though, isn't
right.
it? That's a laugh. I bet one of them's absolutely gasping for the toilet as well, and he's gone. See that toilet?
Disappeared
Vanished,
it, I know.
gone. To be
Makes it
fair,
come
I
back a
mean,
second because I'll disappear again. Sorry.
I'd be fuming with that. I'd be fuming because I think when I'm in any situation, I don't know where the toilet is. I feel a little bit uneasy because you never know when you might be caught short. Um,
If you
so
were
if
the
the
demon, you'd do
toilet
it even more. You'd literally wait until you'd you'd like undone your flies and you were standing over because I disappeared. Sorry. What? No.
disappeared, you pissed everywhere all over the floor again, you bastard.
Literally as you've started weeing. No, because it appears the toilet disappears and it isn't like the plumbing is underneath it. It's just gone, a smooth,
The whole
perfectly
thing, yeah.
tiled
There's
surface underneath.
It's like the toilet never existed, and
Um,
you look down when you're just about to wee. Your penis is gone as well. Just a smooth surface
like a
like an
Ken.
action man, like a Ken doll.
Uh,
And then
um,
you look at your I'm sorry, I am just
your hands and they've got eyes on them. Horrible. Tell you what, Ben, we'll talk about horrors, not toilet related, but again, something that I spoke with Ed about last week. This will catch you right up on it. We were
oh
talking about
lovely.
those traumatic childhood moments when you sneak downstairs and catch, something on TV that your parents are watching that
Oh
isn't safe
yeah.
that gives you nightmares. But then Ed made a very good point. Is that more scary, or is the scarier thing if you ever get up in the night and go downstairs so late that your parents, who you just assume are always up, have also gone to bed
Also
and
gone
there's
to
just
bed. Yeah,
no one downstairs in your house and it's just
yeah.
empty and
It's
dark?
almost like there's something about nighttime when you're a kid, like the silence of like me. I usually go to bed quite late, and over the years I've always been someone to stay up pretty late as well because I like the sort of tranquility of nighttime. And I saw someone describe recently as like people like staying up late is because nothing's expected of them. When you're up in the daytime, you're up in the morning, emails, texts, phone calls,
Mm.
knocks on the door, all that sort of stuff. Whereas at night, all of that stuff is just it just doesn't happen because everyone's asleep or not or just relaxing, and that tranquility of night is something that I've always enjoyed. However, like that exactly the same thing when you're a kid is really quite scary because
Mm.
it's just this as a kid you're like used to everyone being awake and sort of around you, and you're used to those moments when you're suddenly alone, and especially in the dark, and your house, your place of your comforting haven, I guess, in the daytime it looks completely different at nighttime. Suddenly everything just feels slightly wrong, doesn't it? And I
Yeah.
remember I remember having to cross. So if I woke up from a nightmare or something, I'd have to cross like past the stairs to get to my parents' room. So and that moment always used to scare me. So like just running,
So the skeletons live obviously on the
I
stairs
wouldn't,
at night.
I wouldn't want to look down, like just because. Oh, if you don't look, then nothing to get you. The same like when you used to switch the light off and run upstairs because
Yeah.
immediately the ghoulies are trying to get you. Then, um, yeah, something about that, and I think this film does capture that sort of uncertainty of it because these kids, you can tell that they're afraid and unsure.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. People who listened would have heard me chat on about that last week. But so I made a quick note here. So it's about the toilet has disappeared, and then what I understand from reading later was on the ceiling. There is a doll on the ceiling, which Kaylee, the daughter, sees and
Yeah.
screams when she sees it move. I thought it was just a strange angle, and it was on the floor watching
That
the
was
movie. Sometimes it's quite incomprehensible. Like I couldn't
yeah.
quite pass it watching it a first time.
Yeah, I felt the same. Like I couldn't tell if things were on the ceiling or if it was just supposed to be that angle. I
Yeah,
think it was a bit
so
confusing, wasn't it?
it's hard to work out. But then I made a quick note of the time here. So around the 40-minute mark, the kids are downstairs again. They're carrying on watching the cartoons, and this is where we get the voice come upstairs. Kaylee goes upstairs and then is told, and again, credit for this one, pay this one out. Genuinely like a tense moment, right? Where come upstairs with this kind of
Yeah.
surreal quality voice. Um, yeah, like a voice commands her to come upstairs, and she does go, and
Is
then
it
says to
supposed to be
look
the
on,
voice of
look on.
their dad? I was thinking, is it the voice of their dad, but
Yeah,
like kind of
bit distorted.
a bit distorted? Yeah.
Come upstairs.
Come upstairs. It's really quiet as well. You have to listen. And sometimes
It's
it
like a
gives you subtitles.
whisper. Yeah, sometimes subtitles, sometimes not, which is again a bit I find interesting. But
Yeah.
just come upstairs. And she goes upstairs.
Come on.
And he goes, "I will look under the bed." She has a look
Oh
under.
yeah. The
That
look
was
under the
like,
bib
yeah,
too long. Lasted too long. I was like, come on then. What's it gonna show? What's it gonna show? Come on, make me jump, make me jump. No, still nothing, still
and the
nothing,
answer's
still nothing.
nothing.
The answer is
And
nothing, yeah.
then when she comes upstairs, then there is a figure sat on the other side of the bed, which my
Yeah.
assumption was it's her mom.
Yeah.
And then it says, "Oh, both me and your dad love you very much, but I need you to close your eyes now."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was good, right? Like it
Like,
was
I'm not
yeah,
gonna.
chills saying that out loud.
I
That was good.
shan't.
Yeah, shan't, thanks. Or I'm closing my eyes, but I want some qualifiers here. For 10 seconds until you're gone, you're going to tell me when I can open them again because I don't want to close my eyes and open
Yeah.
them and you're standing right there.
No. I got no time for that. I'll close my eyes, but I will be windmilling my hands at the same time. So if you do want to come close to me, you'll get hit, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, how about you don't do the scary thing you're going to do and I will leave and then you can do the scary thing when I'm not just in here with my eyes closed but
Yeah,
have gone.
that seems fair.
And again, I didn't necessarily pick up on this because, like you say, the conversation has been a little disjointed up until this point already. But the
Yeah.
notes, again, from the synopsis on the wiki page, talk about how Kaylee, after this event where she's been kind of commanded by the demon and this thing has happened, she's a little less responsive to Kevin and isn't quite so warm to him and she won't explain what's happened.
Yeah.
She won't explain what's happened. But then there's some crunching sounds up there, and then she just is gone at some point, right? We never really.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that kind of happened. We don't really find out. Well, I guess we do find out because the Skinamarink does say something a little bit later. There was a chair. After some of the thumping, there's like a chair as well that's upside down. And again, I wasn't sure if this was an angle or not. And then does the chair vanish? I think the chair just like slowly vanishes. And
it's a weird visual. And again,
before, yeah.
you're looking at this and you're not necessarily sure what it is that you're seeing.
I think
So
after that is when doesn't Kevin? I think Kevin suggests pushing a couch to block off the hallway.
yes, yeah.
From
I think it's
the
when
mysterious
Kaylee. I think
voice.
it's when Kaylee comes downstairs. She says, "Help me move the sofa." So they
Help me with the
put the
sofa. I've
sofa
had a bloody
against the
guts
door.
full.
Tell
I'm
you what,
terrified.
I've had a terrible, scary time upstairs. We put the sofa against it, but then she is just gone. And then
Yeah.
Kevin does go down and look, and then I made a note again of the time thing. So The encounter upstairs is at roughly 40 minutes. At 58 minutes, Kevin encounters basically a featureless or
Mm.
eyeless, mouthless girl
Yeah.
in probably the most jump scare-ish moment of the film, right?
Yeah. What's it kind of do? I mean, it's kind of like a shrill noise, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's not like one of those violin stabs or anything like that. It's just a shrill sort of kind of like.
Yeah, a shrill noise. And then it's just Kevin from this point onwards. The toys start disappearing, like there's some soft toys, there's the Lego, they start disappearing and reappearing around the room, and then the demonic voice focusing its attention on Kevin says, I want to play now, Kevin.
I don't like it. A bit Black Phillippi, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit Black Phillippi.
Yeah.
But then a kitchen drawer opens, he has a knife, and then knife goes, stick that knife in your eye, Kevin.
I shan't.
Yeah, no. We uh,
I ain't
texted you
doing
about
that.
this earlier, Ben. Like, this is what I imagine conversations with friend of the show and star of several paranormal activity movies, Toby, gets
Yeah.
gets about telling kids to do stuff which I don't think modern kids
No.
would be on. Not a kid, Ben. I've not been a kid for a long time, but I think even when I was a kid in the 80s, I had more exciting things to do than stick a knife in my eye just because some chap told me to do it.
No. No. I mean,
I
I don't
didn't
think
have a
there's much.
tablet or whatever.
I don't think there's much I'd stick in my eye. You know. I feel like I'd always be. I've always been a bit not eye. What's the word? I'm not eye phobic. I'm not scared of eyes, but scared of something touching my eyes. Don't
Yeah,
touch me eyes. Like,
you've
when
seen
you
you've
like
seen Biker
actually
Grove.
physically touch your eyeball. Like when you touch
Yeah.
your eyeball with your finger, that used to get me. Now not so much.
But yeah, you just
I have
gotta
seen Biker Grove. You're correct. I have seen Biker
you
Grove.
don't get shot in the eyes with paintballs. You know that'll blind you at least for a few episodes. Um, I think he eventually did get better, but
Did he? Okay,
yeah,
that's right then.
or but
Glad
yeah,
to hear it.
this demon, and again, I watched it a few times, like because again, I read through some analysis and some essays on the thing that basically it talks about the power of the demon to compel people to do stuff because it made Kaylee go upstairs. And then Kevin immediately complies with what he said. And I thought, okay,
Hmm.
is this something that happened? But it isn't something that we see on screen. We just,
No,
um, we just, it just, the demon voice you hear him go, put that knife in your eye. And then he's
shan't.
yawping, that little kid. He's owling because he's done it.
So did he do it? He just did it. He
Yeah.
went, yeah, go on then. Had a beast. What's his name?
Ooh, Skinamarink.
The kid. Sorry, the kid.
Kevin.
Kevin. Little kid Kevin as well. Actually, this is set in 1995, isn't it? So little kid Kevin is absolutely peak time. Kevin
Yeah.
McAllister.
Not like this
Everyone.
Kevin, not like the other Kevin, though. I think that other Kevin would have shoved it in the demon's eye. He got no respect.
Yeah, he would. Wouldn't have been
This
scared at
very
all.
obedient little kid. So he does do it.
Yeah.
Um, and then he's screaming and shouting. And again, real, it isn't like kid crying you get on films. I think
Mm.
great sound design. I don't know if they give the kid a Chinese burn or something to make him, but proper like howling that you get from a kid, like absolutely grizzling he is. Like
Yeah.
when a kid has fallen over and hurt themselves and they're like doing breathless, just
It was
shout crying.
it was one of those where I was like, how did they make the kid cry like this? Maybe I don't want to know. Maybe they actually maybe he actually got Skinamarink, you know?
Yeah, but yeah, give him a little karate chop on the leg. Give him a
Correct. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
just
Give him
maybe
a dead leg would do it. I reckon dead
yeah,
leg's the one.
yeah. So he's
Bloody
upset.
hell.
And we did see them trying to use the phone earlier, and they start dialing a number first, and nothing happens. Then you hear them dial. We assume from the touch tones 911, and nothing happens. But
Hmm.
now the phone comes back into play, and Kevin phones again. And we have a conversation deeply with briefly with an outside person. We assume a real person, and he says, "Oh,
Yeah.
I've cut myself with like I've been cut with a knife and now I feel sick.
Such a
And
weird, like distant voice. Where again, this reminded me of Silent Hill, a bit like Silent Hill, The Room, when you try and communicate with the outside world in a way, and you can't. You're kind of there's kind of like this barrier between you and the real world, where you're just kind of like it's a really distant voice, like you're absolutely miles away.
a really
Um,
crackly phone line gave
yeah.
me, since probably because you posted about it the other day, Resident Evil Gun Survivor. Vincent.
Yeah. Vincent. Am I Vincent? Have I stuck a knife in my eye?
Skinamarink. Skinamarink?
Am
You were a
I
murderer. A,
Skinamarink?
a murderer? No,
I
it's
can't
not.
be.
It's not that. It's the operator,
No.
and it says, "Oh, normal 999 operator conversation. Like, stay calm. Is there someone in the room with you? Why are you whispering? Someone's going to come and help you."
Mm.
And then tell you what, you take your eyes off the phone for a second, and then it's just one of those ones that you pull along on a bit of string.
It's turned into the phone from Toy Story, isn't it? With the face
Yeah.
and the I'd be gutted. You'd be absolutely gutted, wouldn't you? You'd be like, oh, I'm doing so well,
So do
getting
you
so
think then,
close.
little bit of theory from your side now, do you think that the demon was always the phone and it was toying with him and then going, actually, that's just a toy phone actually now? Or had they really got through to a person and they've gone, oh, enough of that, transform the
Yeah,
phone?
I think the latter. I feel like it does feel like they've got through to somebody, and they're kind of like they find a little loophole potentially to get away from old Skinamarink, and he's gone. Oh bloody hell! I've got to use one of the tricks in my book, and that trick is that because I feel like they're. It feels like a sort of a parallel. It feels like they're in another dimension somehow. They're in
Yeah.
some creepy supernatural dimension where there is you can still communicate with the outside world through certain ways, but the Skinamarink has power over that dominion where it can change anything into anything. Essentially, you could
Yeah.
be on the phone and you could look down and it's a cucumber, for example.
But it's not. It's still a phone at least. And it does a little jump scare of ringing in a while, but
That was
it's
yeah,
done
that was
that.
pretty. That was pretty loud as well, wasn't it? That
And he
ring.
has another conversation with Skinamarink now. He kind of goes, oh, what are you doing? And Skinamarink says, oh, I can. Sorry, I do his voice. I can do anything actually. And he goes, oh, okay. Um,
Fair shake.
where's my where's Kaylee? And she goes, oh, there was I think Skinamarink said I can do anything.
Yeah.
There was a little girl and she said she wanted her mom and dad, so I took her mouth away. So, well, that's clearly not what she asked for. I mean, say no by all means, but it's not. I want mom and dad. Take your mouth then, I guess.
I guess I just had to take your mouth, wouldn't I? Yeah, because he said she didn't like obey him,
Didn't do what she
or
said. Didn't do what he said.
he didn't do what he said, so he's like, "And take your mouth away." And I'm like, "Ah,
I'd be
that's. I
even less
mean,
inclined to do what you said if you took her mouth away.
yeah, exactly. I'm not doing anything now
But
because who
he
knows what you're going to take away next." Also, is this is it
catch more flies with honey, Skinamarink. Thanks.
yeah. I mean, is this the world
Um,
you want to live in? Is some sort of dictator where you just want me to do exactly what you say, or you take my mouth away? Like, I'm not into that. I'm not
and
signing up for that.
didn't say that she was demanding a mom and dad. She wanted a mom and dad. So okay,
Yeah,
probably
a
saying, "Oh, I
demand.
tell you what, I want doesn't get." So he's thinking.
Exactly. What a shame.
So and we don't see Kaylee again. He just goes, "Oh, but she was a right Debbie Downer, going on wanting a mom and dad all the time." So I took him out of the way, and
Yeah,
her eyes actually, you probably saw her. Yeah, I took them off her, and that's just it now. Bit rude. And then we have
very
a
rude.
weird. He walks into a bedroom that's a vortex, and there's loads of toys on the far surface of it, and then we just see 572 days appears on screen.
Yeah, that was
Is
weird.
that
What are we
how
supposed to
long?
think of
Is
that?
that how
How
long they've
long?
been there?
Maybe like time passes differently, like there. Maybe like these kids have been missing for 572 days, but like really to them, they've just been there for an hour and 40 minutes. What feels like that if they're trapped in this weird dimension. Who I think it could have meant a lot of different things, couldn't it?
Yeah, but then we kind of see the house on its own in just a void. Like you say, it's just a house
Yeah.
nowhere. and then we have our final scene where, well, first there's shouting and blood splashing all over the floor.
Oh yeah, the blood splattered and then it vanished and then the blood appeared again and then
Yeah.
Kevin's
So
calling for his mum.
is that the demons doing something else and then undoing it again? We don't. It's hard to say.
Yeah, maybe it's like a hell scenario, when you're supposed to think, oh, you're going to experience this pain over and over again, this agony, and then you're going to be made to relive it for eternity. Something
But
along those lines. Who knows?
but then we just have a door, like a doorway in the middle of nowhere opening, and then we have the faintest image in the dark of Skinamarink himself, the ghoulie. This is where again these reminiscent for me of the of come true. It has this semi-rendered quality to it, which is not quite there. It's just out of your view, and you can't quite comprehend it properly. It's like a shape and
Yeah.
an impression of something rather than a fully realized monster or creature that's come there. You can make out it's got a face, there are eyes, and
Yeah.
there's a rough thing. It's kind of like when people are having a baby in the modern world and you
Yeah.
haven't just got like an ultrasound picture of them anymore. You can do like that 4D
Yeah.
scan and you
Oh
can
yeah.
see them. It looks like they're made out of horrible CGI clay.
Yeah.
Big
I think so.
gloopy
I think
babies.
I saw something once where it said someone commented on it and it said that lasagna looks crisp. I don't know why you'd want a crisp lasagna. I don't want a crisp lasagna. Maybe some of the cheese on the edges. But someone went, that lasagna looks crisp, and he went, that's my son.
Yeah, so that's what he is. But he's like one of those 4D scans, but rendered in green.
That's why he's so angry,
Like on an old IBM monitor. And Kevin goes, yeah. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't sort of like Kevin's really like he's 4 years old. He's like, what's your
Yeah.
name?
Oh.
He's not a little London boy, sorry, like a little
What's your
chimney
name,
sweep.
mate? All right, mate.
Oi, what's your name? Mr.
Oi,
Sherlock Holmes.
are you the bloody Skinamarink? I'm not having this.
he's got no
Skinamarink.
he's got no guesses. He just basically goes, what's your name? And then Skinamarink just fucking rude. Just doesn't say anything.
No, didn't say a word, does he? Skinamarink, you bastard.
Unless his name is
At least
basically
acknowledge me.
maybe his name is just three ellipses.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's really frustrating. Instead of, no, I clearly asked what your name was. And he's like, oh, I'm trying to tell you. My name is just a silence of a certain length. And and that's it. Plot wise, that's what happens. Probably record time for us covering the plot of a film. But
yeah, I think it pretty much is record time. Yeah, I can't argue with that. But yeah, I think in terms of plot, it's pretty threadbare. And for some people that might be like, this is an experiment in atmosphere, and the plot isn't particularly important. But for other people, they might be like, that is pretty much all that's important to me. God damn you, give me more. That wasn't good enough. I'm sick of it.
yeah, and it's difficult. Like I say, like I was definitely engaged and compelled to things which I think there's a great skill in that filmmaking, but there are narrative difficulties to it because, like you, I don't need everything to be explained to me, but I do look for a little bit of narrative to grip
Yeah.
onto. Is there anything else that you really wanted to cover? Like what other bits did you
No, I mean,
take from this, like visually, soundscape wise?
I think we
Did
probably
you find it a
discussed it.
compelling watch?
I mean, to a degree, but I think in terms of the running time, it was a bit of a struggle. I think that I can appreciate what it's done in terms of like the concept and the experimental nature of it. And I think, yeah, sure, it does capture childhood fears and this childhood nightmares in a way. But yeah, like an art installation or maybe like a short film or something, I probably would have appreciated a lot more. Having to kind of sit through an hour and 40 minutes and kind of like be goaded into thinking it was going to go somewhere. But again, yeah, that's mainly because I mean I like found footage movies. I like, even though it's not traditionally found footage, I like found footage movies. I like these sort of like spooky, ghostly, supernatural movies as well. But yeah, it didn't really have anything in terms of substance that would have really made me enjoy it. And I don't really know what that was. Maybe some level of dread. I mean, sure there was dread, but I mean in terms of plot where you're kind of like rooting for these kids to somehow escape or somehow get out, like there's a way out. And yeah, I mean it kind of lent into it slightly with the 911 call, but after that, yeah, a bit frustrating. And as I said, just felt like it was a bit of a tease. A bit of a
Do you think
tease.
you would have maybe felt any differently if not for the social media reaction that we've had from this one? Because I feel like in the build up to this coming out, we know that due to an
Yeah.
error of it being released, like I think was it one of the festivals that was shown it had a watch at home version, so it's basically gained word of mouth from people watching it and doing like TikTok challenges and so on about yeah,
Yeah.
watch
I
this
think that
bloody
that kind of
film.
happens, doesn't it? I think like with horror movies, the horror movies that kind of capture some sort of that capture sort of like social media trends and things like that. It's always the things you kind of least expect, and it's not always the things that I think are great. Like, you know, when you see the the, the sound bites that kind of say this made me sick with, and people were getting carted off in ambulances after watching this movie, and don't do this next trend because you'll actually end up with a haunting in your house. I don't know. So, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Just
your
something
doors
like
have bloody
that.
disappear.
Well, your doors blade disappeared. I'm like, I can't be dealing with that. And I think, yeah, as somebody who consumes horror in lots of different formats constantly, every day, um, you see so many different things, so many different styles and genres and subgenres and attempts at sort of making these things happen. So that yeah, when things do sort of capture certain generations and certain social media platforms as well, I kind of just like sit back and kind of watch it happen. Don't get too embroiled in it because I kind of know what to expect. So, you know, as soon as somebody says there's a TikTok challenge associated with this film and seeing if people can actually watch it and sit through it, automatically part of me thinks maybe that's not for me. But still, like curiosity gets the better of me most of the time. So
Yeah. I'm glad I've seen it. I think there are merits to look at it, and I think I there's some real promise from the experiment that they've done and the filmmaking here.
mhm.
Um, maybe, as you say, maybe not for the length of time that ran, particularly just for my tastes. I think I
Yeah,
do like a little more to grip onto, or a little bit more character from
it's
the
too slippery. Talking about gripping
yeah.
onto, it's too slippery, way too slippery. Constantly slippering, slippering.
It's slippery all over the place.
Oh, slippering all
Yeah,
over the place, man.
I guess then it's time to do some name game, right?
Oh yeah, we could do some name game. You said you had quite a lot, so I've not really prepared many, but regardless, I'm sure this is going to be a good time, isn't
Shall I
it?
begin this week?
uh, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so what's the synopsis of Skinamarink, and then I can go
So,
from that.
synopsis is simply two children wake up in the middle of the night to find their father is missing, and the windows and doors in their home have vanished.
Okay, two children go to see a limited run of a movie that's been doing the rounds actually, but due to some demonic interference, all of the beverages in their house have disappeared. So they have to buy a rather pricey one at the theatre.
Uh, Skinamarink.
Cinema drink is
Oh God, cinema. I was like, sometimes I think is this word very key to the clue, or does it mean nothing about it? Cinema drink. Yeah, yeah, cinema
cinema
drink.
drink.
That's it, mine. That's good. Very nice.
What have you got for me?
I've only got one, so I've only got one. I tried to write a couple more down, but I couldn't. So two children wake up in the middle of the night. Uh, wake up in the middle of the night to find their parents have vanished, and a famous intellectual from The Simpsons wants to take them out for a meal.
Cinema Frink.
Nearly wants to take them out for a meal.
Um, dinner with Frank. Dinner with Frank.
Dinner with Frank, correct.
Okay, I won't use my dinner one, but here's the other ones I have for you then. So a a man with an exaggerated Scottish accent exclaims when he wakes up in the middle of the night, finding that someone has put all of his favorite clear alcoholic spirit, but he put it down the kitchen drain. It's all just floating in there. When he exclaims about it, what has he spotted?
Something Masink.
He shouts to his wife, "Here, there's gin in my sink."
Who did that? Oh, there's gin in my
Um,
sink. That's terrible. Sorry.
Next up, um, a the was he a politician? Either way, famous personality. Um, most known in more recent days in the UK for doing those insurance adverts where it's a "calm down, dear." It was a commercial. Um,
He's dead as well.
lands lands him, yeah, rest in peace. Lands himself a new gig. Um, in a sequel to The Emperor's New Groove, in which he plays the Egyptian sun god transformed into a small lizard.
Jesus Christ. Winner.
Yeah.
Winner. And then the guy I think from the Emperor's New Groove is called
That's not
Frank...
important. It's just
it's a sequel.
It's a sequel to it, except he is playing the Egyptian sun god who's been transformed into a little lizard.
Winner the Gink.
It's Winner Raskink.
Jesus, what's a gink? Why did I say that?
I don't know what a gink is. So it's a Winner Raskink.
Wait, there's a little old lady who lives near me, who looks like Michael Winner. And every time I walk past her, in my head, I say,
"She's a calm down, dear."
I would never say it to her face, obviously, because she's probably had it her whole life, Well, at least the last 20 years of her life. Very old lady.
Absolutely sick and tired of just a local associate that they have no time for, because they're always about scavving off them the things. And they're usually rooting around in the skips and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So two kids sick of this character really smelling up the area. They call this person out and tell them how much they smell in an explosion of anger.
Something you stink.
Yes. I've gone particularly with, maybe this is a Midlands thing, calling people like binners. Binner, you skink. You stink.
Oh God. No, I've not heard that one.
You stink.
You binner, you stink. Bit harsh because he's just down on his luck, We never know.
You absolute binners. Do I have any more? Oh, I tell you what. Two children wake up one evening to find out that their mom's new diet program, which had been going very well at the beginning because she was losing weight as intended, meaning she is more slender than she once was, has now begun to actually just reduce her size overall, and she's actually shorter as well as narrower.
Skinny and shrink. Skinny then shrink.
But it's their mother in particular.
Skinny ma shrink. And
she's not skinny, she's just less rotund than she was before.
Slimmer.
Thinner ma shrink. Finema shrink.
Finema shrink. Hang on a minute. Finema shrink. And they've gone, yeah, you're right. There we go.
And then finally.
Jesus.
Moving on from his illustrious career in acting, a famously bald actor who has played the King of Siam and a badman in the original Westworld gathers
Oh God.
a lot of a metallic element with an atomic weight of 30 and sells it exclusively to the automotive industry.
Jesus Christ. I can't remember what his name is.
What's his business that he opens?
What's he selling?
A metallic element with the atomic number 30.
Oh God.
It's a silver metal, and he's selling it exclusively to the automotive industry.
Let me begin with M.
It's not. It's Brenner. It's Brenner's Car Zinc.
Jesus. I mean, I
I
don't know.
told you it was going to be a new low.
I don't know where my brain was going with that, but it was in none of those directions. And to be fair, I think I had a fair crack at some of them. That was one step too far.
Yeah, that was a new low bar because it turns out Skinamarink, well, doesn't rhyme with actual very many real words.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't rhyme with any real
But I
words.
am taking great pride in cinema drink and possibly gin in my
Cinema Drink
sink.
was great. Both really good. 10 out of 10. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. 10 out of 10. We've got to rate the movie. I am gonna kind of like rate it in two ways. I think one is like as a film, as a movie, as an enjoyable movie, a horror movie to watch, because that's what this podcast is
Mhm.
about, watching horror movies. The other one is kind of like in terms of an atmospheric experimental thing. So I mean, for that, so for that sense, as an atmospheric, experimental, interesting something that I could have easily watched at a shorter running time and probably enjoyed. Um, it's like a as that if I walked in and this was an art installation or some sort of short film at 8 to 10 minutes, for example, I would be like,
Oh,
that
what's
is
this
pretty
then?
spooky. What's this then? A B. I go, that was interesting. I'd want to see a feature length of that. Oh yeah, an hour and 40 minutes. Nah. But if I did, I'd want to see a lot more to it. However, as a movie that like I sat down to watch at home, not in a theater, um, and as you know, somebody who enjoys various, it reminded me of a lot of good things. It reminded me of Silent Hill, The Room. It reminded me of that final scene in Blair Witch Project. But I just don't think there was anything really there for me. I think if this was a deeply profound personal thing, which I think for the filmmaker it is, then for them this is like their wheelhouse and they've completely got it nailed down. And if somebody else is watching it and they feel the same way, they're going to be really engrossed and taken in by it. For me, as I said, I was just frustrated. I felt like it was the horror film equivalent of edging. So for that reason, I was frustrated. I think I'd have to go for a D. And
Mm.
I feel like I could have felt completely different if it was like an hour and a
Yeah.
bit.
Just that
But I feel
extra
like
40 minutes back.
that extra 40 minutes, I feel like it was just too much, too far. The narrative was paper thin, and it just didn't engage me perhaps in the way that it would somebody else. But I think it's one of those experiences that's going to be completely different for you depending on your personal relationship with the visuals and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to not trying to be too negative. That was all.
Well, no, all very fair, Ben. I'm probably going to join you on the exact same system there. I think you're right. As a piece of art, as an experiment, I think it's to be very much applauded. Um, Go
Yeah.
check it out. It's interesting, and I think you're right for those personal takes as well. And this will lead into my other thing, into my rating for it as a film. I found as I was going through, because I have become accustomed to more of a narrative
Hmm.
to being attached into there, and things being developed as pieces of entertainment and that in there. It's a very Elden Ring approach to storytelling, right? It's very kind of it's just there, but you've got to work to get some of this story out there.
Hmm.
When I first saw the film coming together and we're in those early scenes, I found myself, relating to the experience of those kids and the fear that would generate. But then building up the story myself, trying to think about what the next like, oh, what's happened to their mom? Is she not alive anymore? And, thinking
Mm.
of terrible scenarios like, has the dad taken his own life? And, he's upstairs in this room, and there's and that's going to be these things. These two kids are left alone in the world, and there is something deeply unpleasant, and and
Mm.
that's and that's what they're being faced with. Is it a story of neglect and abuse, and those kids' world has shrunk to that size because they're not permitted to leave, and
Yeah.
that's why the doors have disappeared, and it's a metaphorical piece. But the way the film then plays out, it kind of does enough to discount those thoughts, but without replacing it necessarily of something clear cut as its own.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't doubt that this is a skilled filmmaker who has those ideas and has put them in there. But
Yeah.
again, listening to the production process, it's inspired by the shorts put on the filmmaker's website. I think to the point he credits his commenters as his co-directors, because they have given the ideas of
Yeah.
visuals and moments that they want to see. So there's probably a great deal of thought got into it from a lot of sources, but has it potentially become a disparate source away from anything that's clear cut in the reaction to capturing all of those individual experiences from people who've commented, and mixed with the creator's own
Yeah.
childhood memories and traumas? So maybe that cohesive or direct message that you can fully bring together is kind of lacking, and that's where it comes down to that piece of entertainment. I'm probably going to land exactly the same as you, Ben. I think B as a piece of experimentation and thought-provoking
Mm-hmm.
piece of artwork to look at effectively, but as a piece
Yeah.
of entertainment, probably will sit on a D, because I think, having seen it and experienced it, will I necessarily watch it again? Would I recommend it to someone who isn't into cinematography or the art of
Yeah. I think
cinema?
you'd struggle,
Or,
wouldn't you?
yeah, like, I almost sat and watched this with my wife, but she had a call, so she had gone to continue with some work after hours, so I didn't. I think, had I watched it with her, it would be one I'd be hearing about, like, oh God,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you ain't picking a
Like,
movie for a while, mate. You've
not again. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's where we sit. It's going to be nightmare actually putting a rating on this on Letterboxd, because they can't have a dual system. I'd
No.
recommend you check it out if you want something that hits similar beats, but
Yeah.
is a little bit more structured as a narrative movie. And even then, there's some surrealism in that. But
Mm-hmm.
genuinely check out Come True,
Come
because I
true.
think
Yeah.
that I think that touches on some of the nightmare imagery very, very well.
Awesome. There we go. So a slightly different episode, I think, this week with a slightly more unconventional film. I guess we're getting back to slightly more conventional next week with M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin. I think any movie that's got Batista in probably is going to be a bit more conventional. That'd be
Imagine if we
interesting.
start it and it's just kind of
Yeah,
weirdly angled shots, and then
of
Batista's
Batista.
giving a knock at the cabin and saying, and then the
Hello,
door disappears.
put a bloody knife in your eye. Okay,
Stick a knife in
so
there, will you?
stick a bloody knife in your eye, or I'll Batista bomb you. Okay, so thanks very much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, become a patron over at patreon.com/horror hangout. Thanks to our current patrons, including John Crinnan, Ben Scaife, Stephen Christopher, Laura Kendrick, Toby Miller, Lane Spencer, Ollie Child, Leslie Carlo, Julia Bilgren, Nick Spill, Troy Birch, Pazuzu, and Rosalind Harnias. It's the first time I tried to say that name out loud. Thank you so much, everybody, especially Rosalind, who's just become a patron. That's correct, isn't it? Last week.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm going to bring it up as well, Rosalind. So sorry I butchered your name last week. I didn't know it was coming. It was just at the end of the notes.
yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, when you're reading things out. Like, I'm always butchering directors' names and stuff, but sometimes I've not even thought about saying the name until it's right there in front of me. Yeah, so thanks to Taj Easton for our theme music. Thanks to Acast for hosting the show. Please consider giving us a rating or review, and head over to the Facebook group Horror Hangout Board of Advisors for more. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. All of those places you can tell us that we just didn't get Skinamarink and that we're idiots and that we should give up the podcast forever. Maybe. I don't know.
Probably
And
won't
of
listen to
course,
that last bit though. I just like hanging out with my friend every week. Sorry.
sorry, mate. All right, sorry. Why don't you go and ring 911 about that? Don't do that. Don't waste police time. Um,
Unless it's one of those plastic phones. In that case, honestly, dial
that's
you.
fine.
Go for your life. You see if you can get Elmo on the line. See what he's got to say about it.
He'll have a lot to say, I'm sure. And of course, thanks, Andy, for being a right horror dude. Please don't get Skinamarink. Hopefully, you turn around in a minute and your door will still be there.
It's all right. It's all right. And hopefully,
Yeah,
might
we're
treat
good.
myself to a bathroom break before I go to bed as well. Tell you what, I hope that toilet's still there.
If the toilet vanishes just as you're about to commit, uh, you'll be in my thoughts and prayers.
Well, same for you, Ben. May all of your toilets go undisappeared. And the same to everyone else out there. Thank you for
Oh yeah.
being right, horror dudes. Thanks for
Mm.
listening. Thanks for supporting us. See you for the rest of the rest of the month for a more conventional
Yeah.
knock at the cabin.
Knock at the
Tremors.
cabin.
Howling 2, your werewolf is a streamer bitch.
And when I go and watch Knock at the Cabin, Andy, do you know what I'm going to have? Cinema drink.
Having a
See you
cinema
later.
drink. Get on it. Bye.